Mysterious legendary Pokémon, inaccessible areas, and cryptic symbols and messages. All clues left behind like a trail of sandwich crumbs to keep fans guessing what might come next for Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Today we're going to take a deeper look at all these theories and strange findings I've discovered ahead of Pokémon Day, when we might finally get some real answers. So let's start there. February 27th, the day Pokémon Red and Green first launched in Japan back in 1996. In recent years, this date has become known as Pokémon Day, and for the last few years we've been treated to some pretty epic reveals. The announcement of Pokémon Sun and Moon back in 2016, Pokémon Sword and Shield being revealed in 2019, and who can forget Post Malone singing Sweet Nothings to Lugia for the 25th anniversary. Of course, last year we also got the unexpected reveal of Gen 9, so many fans are hyped about what big announcement we might get this year. Could it be that Paldea's story will continue? Well, if you saw my last video, you might remember that Game Freak don't really seem to stick with one idea for very long. But it's probably in their best interest to follow up with Scarlet and Violet DLC, considering the massive sales these games have achieved. Also, everyone in the comments seemed to agree that they're not paying another $60 just for them to fix the games, so thankfully it looks like they're actually working on fixing them for free, since details for a new patch coming at the end of the month have finally come out, including tons of bug fixes and attempts to improve performance by limiting the amount of Pokemon that can spawn at once. So it seems Game Freak haven't given up on Scarlet and Violet just yet, which is great for those of us that want to see Paldea's story wrapped up, unlike a certain other region that we'll be talking about later in this video. But I want to start with the biggest secret left behind in Gen 9, the third legendary. It's clear that Scarlet and Violet are missing a key component of the Pokemon formula. Every generation so far has had a third legendary Pokemon that usually keeps balance or combats the duo on the game's covers. In the Galar region, we had Eternatus, who was also responsible for producing the Dynamax energy that brought about that region's gimmick. And there's a strange Pokemon described within the Scarlet and Violet books that might just fit both of these categories. The mysterious Disc Pokemon is described by Expeditioner Heath as a bright, gleaming sphere with a shell of hexagons. Sound familiar? It seems that in all versions of these books, certain details about the entity are blocked out. Its name is even illegible in Professor Sada and Turo's own research journals found in one of Area Zero's labs. It's in this journal that we get official confirmation that the Disc Pokemon is in fact responsible for causing the terrestrial phenomenon, and you can actually see the terrestrialization symbol drawn above the disc as well. But getting this close to the drawing, you might have noticed something even stranger about this disc. Is that a frickin' turtle? Considering Heath described this thing as bearing a shell, many theorists have been led to believe this entity might actually resemble a turtle, or more specifically, the World Turtle, a mythological creature said to carry the world on its back, or sometimes carry elephants that carry the world, but regardless, this macroversal being is often depicted as floating through space, which kind of fits with these planets and stars seen in the background of the drawing. Taking a look at this fan art specifically, I'm definitely getting more convinced, especially because it separates the turtle itself from the giant disc, as opposed to a few other fan arts I've seen which depict both as parts of the same being. In any case, you're probably wondering what the heck this sparkly cosmic turtle has to do with the other two sandwich-loving legendaries, and this is where we dive a bit into my own theory. In another page of the Scarlet and Violet books, Heath writes about a strange dreamlike experience he had in which he only remembers having spoken to someone. Upon waking up, he was holding this page with various hexagonal symbols and even what looks like a crown drawn on it. Despite being his own handwriting, Heath has no memory of writing any of this, so it makes me wonder who could have visited him in this dream, or what? According to Professor Sada and Turo's research, it is theoretically possible for a human to travel through time. However, it would be impossible for them to return to the present. So perhaps Heath was visited by a non-human being. Assuming this disc Pokemon really is based on the World Turtle, That means it would have to be gargantuan in size and likely incomprehensible to us tiny humans just chilling on its back. So in order to interact with us, it would need some kind of physical form, or avatar if you will, which is where the professors come in. On our way to the time machine, we learn that this robotic version of the professor cannot exist outside of the Zero Lab, because apparently humans don't yet possess the knowledge to develop such a sophisticated AI. But it's been made possible thanks to the power of the crystals that make up the Zero Lab. The very same crystallization that we know is linked to the disc Pokémon. In the final battle of Scarlet and Violet, we learn that the AI Sada/Turo aren't the only entities we're fighting. The Time Machine's self-defense system, also known as the Paradise Protection Protocol, seems to have a mind of its own, with the AI professor struggling to talk over it. And what symbols appear during their conflicting speech? The very same symbols found within the Scarlet and Violet books page on the disc Pokémon. It seems that for some reason, the AI professor has developed its own moral compass that's different from the AI inside the time machine, which more closely represents the original professor's ideals. A world in which Paradox Pokémon can roam free. So my theory is, the World Turtle, aka the third legendary, and the Professor's AI are actually the same being. And like many other legendary Pokemon, they were never inherently evil, but instead manipulated by the original professors to help achieve their dreams of Paradox Pokemon roaming free. This would directly link the disc Pokemon with the Paradox duo, since it would be directly responsible for creating all of the Paradox Pokemon, including Koraidon and Miraidon. Again, this is all just a theory, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it, or if you have your own ideas behind the origins of this disc Pokemon. But would you believe there's actually 2 more mysterious legendaries found within the Scarlet and Violet books, described only as imagined Pokemon? In the Scarlet book, we find a paradox from the past that resembles the legendary beasts Raikou, Entei, and Suicune, while in the Violet book, we have a very different Pokemon that looks like a robotic fusion of the Swords of Justice, Terrakion, Virizion, and Cobalion. Apparently, these Pokemon were never actually spotted, but rather just sketches based on the other Paradox species found in Area Zero. But considering these two already have placeholder data within the games, and there's even been leaks of their types and signature moves, it's pretty likely they'll appear in the first DLC. So what could be the story behind these imagined legendaries? At the end of the games, we defeat the PPP and power off the time machine once and for all. Right? Well, in order to keep the time machine off, the AI professor had to leave, otherwise it would continue to reboot since their own body was part of the security system. So the professor bids us adieu and is teleported to the world of the past, or future. Regardless if these past/future worlds are real or not, you can't deny how amazing it would be to actually get to visit them and see the Paradox Pokemon in their natural habitats. Personally, I think visiting the different worlds of the Ultra Beast was the coolest part of Ultra Sun and Moon, and I think they could achieve something similar with the Paradox Pokemon. The vibes each Ultra world gave off and how the Ultra Beasts themselves shaped these realities was super interesting, and I think it'd be just as awesome to see the worlds of the past and future that these Paradox Pokemon supposedly come from. We might even find some familiar faces in these Paradox worlds, since the opposite version's professor could still be alive there. As it stands, the Paradox Pokemon are still full of mysteries, with the Dex entry and even the occult magazines frankly adding more questions than answers. Did these ancient Pokemon really exist millions of years in the past? Do all Pokemon eventually turn into robots in the future? Visiting these past and future worlds could give us the answers we're looking for, and also give Game Freak an opportunity to introduce even more Paradox forms, including those imagined ones. But there's one other location we might visit in the DLC that's a bit more familiar. It might just be time for our glorious return to the Kalos region. It's no secret at this point that there seems to be an off-limits area in the northwest corner of Paldea. The reason I think we might actually go there at some point are these diagonal lines matching with those found over the Great Crater, which is similarly blocked off until you progress far enough in the story. With Paldea being based on Spain and the Kalos region from Pokemon X and Y being based on France, it's led a lot of people to wonder if this area could actually be part of Kalos. Geographically, in the real world, this is where the Pyrenees Mountains that separate the two countries would be located, and that actually matches up with the in-game location being basically a super tall rock wall that players can't climb. But thanks to some research from much tech-savvier people than myself, we actually have a glimpse at what's hidden up there. Surprise! It's nothing. We do at least get an idea of how big the area is, but to be honest, that doesn't really mean this is how big the DLC will be. And if it really is part of Kalos, we know there's plenty of trains that could take us further into the region. The biggest problem to me though is, when I think of Kalos, there's one little thing that immediately pops into my head. I know you're probably thinking about it too. Say it with me. Mega Evolutions are still the coolest generational gimmick ever. So if we did return to Kalos, it'd be almost criminal not to include the feature that first made this region stand out. With terrestrialization being so well received though, it's hard to see them letting players get access to Mega Evolutions again. But what if I told you there's a way to bring these ultimate forms back without letting them outshine Paldea's own gimmick? What if the reason we're visiting Kalos is to pit these two against one another in a grand cross-region tournament? It could be similar to the Galarian Star Tournament at the end of Sword and Shield's DLC, or even the World Tournament from Pokemon Black and White 2, which brought back so many beloved characters. This time around though, it would bring back the most beloved Pokemon forms ever. I mean, everyone's seen Ash at the end of the Journeys anime use all three gimmicks in one battle, so maybe the games could take some inspiration and at least let enemies in the tournament use Mega Evolution, Z moves, and even Dynamax against our terrestrialized Pokemon, and prove once and for all which generational gimmick is best. Or, you know, they could give us new Mega Evolutions, that'd be pretty cool, but let's be real, we're probably not getting Megas at all. But there's another transformation we could potentially see during our trip back to Kalos. AZ's Floette, aka the Eternal Flower. Kinda sounds like the name of a Paradox Pokemon, doesn't it? This elusive form originally existed 3,000 years ago, and there's even a theory that the Great Crater of Paldea was created when the ultimate weapon was fired by AZ during the War of Kalos. The crystal texture on it does look an awful lot like the crystal seen during terrestrialization, so this could be another possible reason why we'd head back to Kalos in the DLC. But before wrapping up this video, I want to talk a bit about the gameplay in the DLC. Back during Pokemon Sword and Shield, I made a prediction that eventually Pokemon games maps would essentially become multiple wild areas stitched together, and in the Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra, we got just that. Granted, there weren't any trainers, which was kinda lame, but it was definitely a test of sorts for what would eventually be perfected in Scarlet and Violet, where we have the different areas and provinces replacing your traditional route system between towns. Similarly, I feel like Paldea's DLC could be an excellent opportunity to test out other new features Game Freak hopes to implement in Gen 10, specifically a chance to test out level scaling. Let's be real, the Sword and Shield DLC was pretty cool, but it was very easy with our post-game teams. And that might have more to do with the fact that this girl brought a freaking Venipede to the fight more than like having low levels, but at this point in Scarlet and Violet, and especially with all the level 100 raid Pokemon Game Freak have been blessing us with, most people will have a maxed out team. Making it so trainers match level with the highest Pokemon on your team would make battles a lot more interesting, so even if you go in there with level 100 Pokemon, there might still be a bit of a challenge. Like some of the special raid battles that have come out actually require some strategy to figure out, and it'd be weird to go from that to just spamming the same move and sweeping through the DLC like I felt happen with Sword and Shield. We definitely need a badass final boss battle, like I'm talking Volo from Pokemon Legends, where you're down to your last Pokemon and this dude still has another transformation up his sleeve. Also, if the DLC's mainly just gonna focus on these hidden legendaries, then I wanted to give off the same vibes as Ultra Necrozma. Man, I still get nightmares about that battle. So what are you guys hoping to see in the Scarlet and Violet DLC? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. We have less than a week now until Pokemon Day, and hopefully we'll get some answers to what's next. I just pray it's not another X, Y, and Z situation.